Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, May 9th. We are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Callie Fausey of the Santa Barbara Independent, Josh Molina, man of many hats, and host of the popular Santa Barbara Talks podcast, and Nick Welsh, the angry poodle, his own self, who had yet another bike crash today.
Man of many bicycle helmets, you could have said.
It's beginning to be a trend. All right, let me ask you about something else, Nick. So there was this big, probably the biggest public outpouring of the week in Santa Barbara public affairs at the Board of Supervisors about people protesting the sheriff's cooperation and alleged cooperation with ICE in terms of immigrants from the jail. This is, I don't know, it's kind of a annual exercise, I guess, and the supervisors didn't seem to have a lot to say about it. They went 5-0 to adopt the report. But the sheriff himself, Bill Brown, was not present. He threw the deputy out there to take all the heat for him. What's going on here?
The way so every year the Board of Supervisors by law has to receive a report from the sheriff saying this is how many people who are in your jail and are not legal documented immigrants were turned over, which of course is a loaded expression, to ICE. And the whole dance, the whole convoluted dance by which ICE finds out about them. And the bill was passed in sort of the wake of George Floyd uh, by the state legislature to really limit the collaboration and cooperation
So
between.
that's the point of the bill is to limit the
It's to
cooperation.
limit, how law enforcement can cooperate with ICE. The theory and thinking behind it is if immigrant residents of local communities are afraid that their law enforcement agencies are working hand in glove with ICE. They won't provide information. They won't report crimes. They won't be a good witness. So that the short-term uh, impacts and the long-term impacts are going to actually be deleterious to law enforcement and public safety. So that was passed. So it happens once a year. This year, the numbers were not dramatic. They were up a little bit and down a little bit at the same time. But really, what was in the room on Tuesday, the secondhand smoke was fear. And the secondhand smoke was the fear and the outrage that's been happening when you have, stories in Oxnard of a father at a gas station who's picked up by ICE agents in front of his son, and his son is left in the car. Those sorts of stories are blowing up, and the whole Trump administration's sort of, not so subliminal effort to terrorize people. Um,
Fascist. They're fascist.
yeah,
Yeah, I
huh?
would say fascist. I would.
Yeah, you can say that too. I mean, when you have people showing up and they take a woman in Vermont and they're wearing their baklavas or whatever the hell you call them, it has a sort of a fascist state, totalitarian. We're going to take you for a helicopter ride and you're never coming back vibe to it. So that is all one thinks, or I think, very intentional and is very effective. So the house was packed. Everybody was upset, and it was like, don't cooperate, don't cooperate. The reality is the cooperation is very limited. There were suggestions that the cooperation was not as limited as Sheriff Bill Brown has said in the past. Um, you
And
know,
he says, look, these are bad. The only people I'm turning over are like bad people who I'm
they didn't
required to
even.
turn over.
What was interesting, they didn't even really get into that. And there is an argument there you can make. I mean, Steve Lavanino, supervisor, and by way of question said, "But look, I'm looking at some of the people you have it here that you did turn over. There were 16 people, by the way, got ICE re-arrested 16 people. Um, ICE was interested in maybe rearresting as many as 259, but the sheriff went and said, no, only 16 qualify under the state law. So those are the real numbers. And where was I going?
So it's really more a
Oh yeah,
sign
so
of
Steve
the
Lebanese, hey,
times and sensibilities.
so Steve Lebanese says, hey, look, I'm looking at three of these guys. One has been in the jail 7 times. One's been in the jail 8 times. What kind of people are these, and why is ICE only now getting around to it? Denise Spangler Adams, who we all know is a very outspoken, passionate, you know, support
Conservative.
laws sort person, she reminded people, I think it was about 13 years ago up in Vandenberg Village, there's a woman named Marilyn Ferris. I hope I'm getting her name right. She came
2010.
home from work one day. 2 guys who with extensive criminal histories who were in the country illegally, who I believe had been deported and came back, were there to meet her in her home. They raped her and then they beat her to death with hammers. And so it was the, quintessential horror story. And she sort of threw that in people's face. The point, the other subliminal, not so subliminal
Of course,
point.
it was 15 years ago, and
Yeah,
that's
it was.
also the point, which
Right.
is it's a very rare circumstance that occurs.
Yeah, it was. And I think that, the point of the people in the room was, that is an exceptional case. Um, the normal case is all hardworking, law-abiding people should not be living in terror that if they get pulled over for a DUI and then come in or some dumb thing, I'm not going to minimize DUI, but some lesser crime, and they show up to meet their probation officer or whomever that they're at risk of being, oh, by the way, here's ICE. You're going on a one-way trip to Palousaville. So, but it really, the whole issue, due process has become the new buzzword, and for good reason. The Trump administration.
Well, it's kind of the old buzzword too.
But yeah, but we've reinvented it or rediscovered it, I think is a better word.
Well,
And
I think the thing is, as you point out, the numbers weren't that different this year and last year. And the difference is you didn't have a president who was threatening to take anyone who was brown and send them down to a torture prison in El
yeah,
Salvador. And that's
pretty much. So yeah, that's what that was.
all right.
But the supervisors really didn't have, I mean, on the agenda, it was
There was no
acceptance
action.
report. There was no action they could take. Joan Hartman tried to come up with sort of to tweak it a little bit so that the attorneys representing these individuals would get more advanced notice.
Yeah.
The sheriff said, we will listen to you, but it is the sheriff's decision. And in the hallway, apparently he told people from Jones' office, that is dead on arrival, don't even bother.
It's the sheriff's decision, and you'll notice the sheriff is not here. All right, Callie, speaking of Kabuki theater, we had how many times did we talk on the show about the very passionate demonstrations at the school board about the layoff notices for I don't know, 60, 70 teachers, especially in the arts. And then it turns out the school board said, oh, never mind. There aren't going to be any layoffs, or there's going to be 2 or 3 layoffs. I mean, did they know this all along? Was it, or do you feel like they went and found the money elsewhere because of the public pressure?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the board has said like they knew or they had to over notice, they had to send out like more layoff notices than were actually going to be, final. They knew a lot of those were going to be rescinded, but at the same time, I do think that they um, like the pressure that the community put on them kind of gave them that nudge to find more of the money elsewhere to really like bring that number down. Number was already going to go down, but I think they brought it down a little bit more.
Yeah. And they, when you use this word over notice, so basically Is it because of the contract with the teachers union that if there is a possibility in the fall that they would lose their jobs, that they have to be told months in advance in the spring of the previous year? Is that why this happens all the time?
I think it's something, honestly, I don't know if I can answer that question very well. Josh might be better at that, but it's something with state law that they have to send out the notices in March, even though they're finalized in May. So they have to send them out. They have like a March 15th deadline. I think that's required by the state, but I'm not sure if that's completely accurate.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
then
then yeah.
some of the other thing I note in your story is that uh some of the moms and kids who were involved in the protests at the board meetings are like, nah, not good enough because you're still not providing the level of arts and music education which is required by what, Prop 28, if I got that one right?
Prop 28, yeah. So they think that school district could be doing more with Prop 28 funding, funding more, you know, programs for the arts. They think that the secondary space schedule could be revised to allow for more electives so that students can engage more in the arts and music. And they think that the district should be sticking to its strategic arts plan, which came out, I think, like last year or 2 years ago. Yeah.
Right.
So
And then
how were the
other,
cuts?
go ahead.
In terms of people who got pink slips, how many were arts and music teachers?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that number off the top of my head. It wasn't like very many. It was across the board. Teachers got pink slipped. But the arts and music part of that is what generated the most outrage. I think maybe it was like I don't even know. I can't say that number off the top of my head.
Yeah, it was, well, I think your story said it was three altogether, but yeah, I don't know what departments they were in. And then elsewhere on the education beat, the supervisors moved ahead with this. Uh, I guess it's a plan, or it's more than a proposal. Is it yet a project? I don't know. I'm getting my alliteration mixed up. It's a to use, is it county land for teacher housing?
It's not county land, it's privately owned land, but they are getting a loan from the county to pay for some of the development fees that they will have to pay. And by they, I mean um, this Red Tail, they're called Red Tail, they're a development company, whatever, that the school district, the San Barbara Unified School District, sold this big Tatum property to back in the day for like $17 million. And yeah, now the County Board of Supervisors just gave them a loan to help them develop affordable housing for teachers.
And this is like a Laura Capps thing of long. I mean,
Yes.
I remember her going on about this when she was on the school board, I think, still.
Well,
It's a
it's a
good
lot of
idea.
housing. I mean, it's
Huh?
not, remember the 516 or somewhere in that ballpark?
That's a great, yeah. I mean, it's not,
Yeah, it's 517 total units. 106 are going to be affordable primarily for dedicated to teachers, and then also like 8 unhoused veterans.
yeah.
Those numbers are significantly better than most that you'll find in any of the big development proposals we're seeing now.
Yeah, and I think that's why the county was so amenable to actually giving out this loan, even though that's something they've never done before.
It does seem
Josh,
like
is
there's a
that because
lot.
Goleta hated the red tail development so much they had to pony up more, or Josh?
Um,
Sorry, I was just double checking some of the numbers. I didn't think it was that many total units. At least that's not what I reported. But um, yeah, so I don't know. It's a big deal that the school district is able to build this amount of housing. They used to own the property. They sold it to Red Tail Development, and now Red Tail Development is going to lease it back to them for it won't be just teachers, but teachers will have the first right to live there. And if there are not enough teachers who want to live there, then they will open it up to other people in the community. So this is beneficial because this goes to the whole thing of, compensation, salaries. If you're able to live there, it's a big deal. And they're also building housing over there by Trader Joe's on the east side, off of Milpa Street at the former, I forget the name of the development there, but
Part of
that's
a
going to be like
school.
40 units or something like that. So
The school district. So who's is the school district the developer?
they're working with the housing authority
Okay.
on the property at the school, Parma School. The housing authority will be developing that. And then in the other one, in the Tatum, they're working with the county housing authority and Red Tail Development.
Gotcha. All right. Well, but Josh, your biggest story of the week was obviously this New York pizza place that's opening up on West Montecito Street. Did you see this, Nick? 18-inch pies this guy's going to make, and he's like a chef from New York. I mean, I don't know, is he open
He's
to
apparently a really big deal chef, and he just wants to do pizza now.
Is it all takeout, or can you go in there and sit down?
There's some tables on the outside, like patio seating, but there's nothing on the inside. You just kind of
Mostly-
order and move on. Yeah.
Mostly takeout. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I got to check that. Well, the other big story, Josh, you had, which I think we've not seen in our time before, which is members of the city council cutting their own pay. That's a pretty good deal. How does that work?
So unlike the Board of Supervisors, which voted to give themselves a 48% pay increase earlier this year, the city council salaries are tied to the area median income for a household of one. So as it goes up, they get pay raises. As it goes down, they get decreases. It turns out that the AMI went down last year by almost 5%.
So
which
here,
means-
I'm sorry, I know I'm jumping in, but what the hell? That seems like that's really the big story. I mean, the city council was not being magnanimous or anything. They just had no choice in the matter. But the fact that the area median income dropped, what does that story tell? What's the backstory there?
Well, I did ask some people that question and they didn't really have answers. I did put a call out to Peter Rupert, did not hear back from him to get sort of his economic
He's getting ready
perspective.
for his big present, his big event.
And I did ask Keith DeMartini that question. Well, why is the area median income going down? And so he said, that's, like Department of Labor kind of stuff. So that is a bigger question. That is a bigger issue. I think
What
people.
does it reflect demographically? I mean, that are
Well, couldn't it just reflect the increased cost of housing? I mean,
no, because it's your income. It's not your cost of living. So it's your income. Somebody is leaving town, and other,
well, we know it's not the Board of Supervisors.
they don't live in the city of Santa Barbara, except for lower caps.
Anyway,
So they have to make 5% less. And Randy, the mayor, he makes 100% of the area median income. So he's making, based like $69,000 a year, and the city council's down to something like 58, 59 or something like that. So it's a pay cut. They don't, depending on how motivated they are, everyone on the council has another job. So, except for Oscar Gutierrez. Oscar Gutierrez does not have another job. He does do freelance video production services. He took the biggest hit financially, but the others, I think they can sort of bear the brunt of this impact. And of course, they're being
he
very.
doesn't pay rent.
He does live with his family, his childhood home, and I do believe he pays his mother something on some sort of financial relationship understanding that they have. I don't know how much he consistently pays, but he is most impacted. He told me, Josh, I have to live off of $50,000 a year, and I said, come work at the Independent or Newshawk, join the club, dude. You get benefits at least, So but it is an impact. They're all of them, by the way, are being very magnanimous. Like, of course, we want to share the pain that the people in the community are sharing, and so there, no one's really complaining or grumbling. I did get some emails after the story came out saying, Josh, they've gotten big raises over the years too. So this is not that big of a deal. They've gotten double-digit increases. Keith Martini, the budget director, did not say that. He said that they got about 5% in the past. So anyway, it is kind of quirky. Rarely do you think of elected officials making less money, but at a time when the board is making $180,000 now, and these people are making, that much less, it is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is messing around with the Bureau of Labor Statistics and how they calculate things and what they include in things. And so I don't know if that's it. It would seem this would be a lagging thing. That this would
You would think so too.
yeah, reflect last year rather than this year. But
Jerry, I'm just proud that I found this obscure little detail in this huge budget document and I wrote it on to page one, just like we used to do in the old days.
Gosh, I'm proud that you found this new pizza place. That's what
I think it's great that you got the story, but it's sort of like the real question is still hanging out there. Like, what does it mean? Why is it? I mean, the real story is the AMI going down, and that just says something that's kind of spooky.
Well, maybe we can collaborate, Nick, and work on a
Yeah,
story
I hear there's a
together.
lot of
and
collaboration.
Tell the full thing.
Huh? A lot of collaboration going on these days. All of a sudden, couldn't do it with Mission and State when exclusivity was dead. No, not then, but now. Oh, now we're all threatened. Let's collaborate. All right, that's.
Let's just wait. Let's just wait and see on that.
We'll tell you more about that.
I would say
when we have the new, whose name's going to come first, the Independent or Newshawk?
Hey, Jerry, I was just saying,
Independent, or is it the Independent Newshawk? I wonder.
Jerry, before you start wetting your pants, I say you better go order some more Z pens.
All right. Hey, I had my Newsmakers national political pundits on last week to talk about 100 days, and I didn't get to congratulate you, Nick, and Callie about a very fine package, a cover story about the local impacts of Trump in the first 100 days. Josh, apparently Newshawk decided to whiff on that.
Yeah, Newshawk says we don't do those sorts of stories.
Yeah, too much controversy from the donors or something. Anyway,
Hey,
Callie,
I do what I can. I am not the entire brand of Newshawk. So, it's not my fault 8 reporters teamed up to do something.
Josh, when the Independent takes over Newshawk's editorial decision making, you'll be able to do that.
Yes, I'll be working at Panda Express for $3 an hour. That's for sure.
Callie, to say a word, if you would, about a couple of the education and social services impacts that you wrote about in that very fine package, which I recommend everybody go read if you haven't already.
Yeah, so one of I think the most striking was the just complete like overnight removal of Title X funds, which fund sexual health and reproductive services. So like Planned Parenthood and Santa Barbara neighborhood clinics use those funds to provide like affordable birth control, STD testing, cervical cancer screenings. None of that money is being used for abortion services. I just want to make that loud and clear. And about $300,000 were coming from that fund and going to Planned Parenthood Central Coast to allow them to give or to allow more patients to access their services on an affordable, like sliding fee scale. And so to rip the rug out from under them it was a little bit heartbreaking to talk to the Planned Parenthood Central Coast representative about this. And last Trump administration did the same thing, took out that funding, but they had more time, they had advance notice. And then this time around, they just like cut it like overnight. So they didn't have as much time to plan. The path forward isn't as clear. And then it's kind of like a it's a murky path for the school districts too, because it's the Trump administration is threatening to take away funding for school districts that have diversity programs. So DEI, that wokeism, I'm trying not to curse. Um, but yeah, threatening to pull
I should
funding
you be
for
the only one who's trying?
try really hard. Um, yeah, threatening to take away funding for school districts that have DEI programs. And I talked to Santa Barbara Unified, and they have about $11 million in federally funded programs that could be at risk. And even though,
But
the Trump,
DEI broadly defined by whatever they want to say DEI is.
whatever they want, yeah, exactly, whatever they want to say DEI is. And, I spoke to school district officials in Santa Barbara Unified, and many of them they were all hesitant to call anything diversity or DEI or a DEI program. Like they have ethnic studies and those kinds of things, but they were very, they
Which
don't
is
want to attach
required by
that term.
state law also.
Yeah.
And then Nick,
But
you
yeah.
had a piece about the food bank, which was kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, the food banks, a lot of the cuts that we found, they're on the way, or they're looming, or we don't know, or the sword of Damocles is flying overhead. Food banks, the sword of Damocles has come and chopped off $5 million worth of either money or food sources. And at a time when the number of people who are going to be denied food stamps is likely to increase in the county because of other cuts to the tune of 55,000. So what we're having is at a time when the food bank is going to absolutely be asked to do more, there's going to be a lot more people who are going to be needing it. They're going to have to do more with less. And one of the programs that's being cut, ironically or not ironically, is there's a program designed to help local farmers. So what you do is you give food bank money and you say you go buy X amount of fresh produce from local farmers. Small local farmers, how feel good can you get and how helpful to the economy can you get? That's gone. So the food bank is famous for they have these big gala events where the empty bowls and they're kind of big famous fundraisers been going on about 25 years. They took out an ad in our paper this week saying, guess what? We're not going to have any empty bowls. We're not having any galas because the amount of money it takes and the time and effort to put these together distracts from our primary core mission.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of, you don't get more basic in terms of, throwing the wounded and orphans overboard.
I mean, it's just, I say it again, it's sad but true. It's like people are not going to wake up until they see bad stuff happen, and it's starting to happen. And it's going to continue to happen. We're 100 days into this. There's 1,300 days of this mob boss to go. And yeah, we got the midterms in a year and some months, but this is bad. This is nothing like any of us have seen.
No, we've never seen anything like it.
And Josh, as long as I'm handing out compliments to the Independent, I do want to say a word about your ongoing coverage of the death of that young woman out at UCSB, mysterious death under mysterious circumstances, which, I mean, if ever there was evidence of why Henry Yang is, way past his sell-by date, the university's conduct and inability to be transparent or even decent in this whole event, has made this poor girl's poor father have to go out there and become the face of this whole case and try to pressure them into doing something. And I think, it's a testimony to the value of journalism, the way that you stayed on it and spoken with him on multiple occasions and just kept on it. And I don't know if they're ever going to do anything or not. What's the status of the case?
Well, just a little side note, Jerry. I was thinking how, like, this is a reminder of how much I hate and why I'll never work again in PR and public relations, because it's like UCSB just spins, right? They spin this narrative. And if you work for them, you have to do what they say. And that's so counter to what we do as journalism. And it reminded me of back when I worked for Doss Williams, of how you had to say what he said you had to say, even if it was true or not, because that's your client, it's your boss. And it just reminded me of and appreciated how much I love journalism, even if it doesn't pay well. It's like, wow, at least I'm in a profession where I can look myself in the mirror every day and be proud of the work that I'm trying to do. Notwithstanding a hole in the AMI, Nick, but that happens every now and then. But the latest is this family has hired a private investigator, and they have hired a attorney, Santa Barbara attorney, and they're the ones that got all this attention. So this happened. I wrote a story. It was very low key, and then all of a sudden they do this press conference. They show the photo of this guy who was last seen with her, and UCSB had said zero, zilch, nothing until this press conference. And then they had one of those vanilla crisis communication overbaked statements that said nothing, right? We're looking into it. As soon as the private investigator and the attorney showed the photo, people ID'd him. They called and said, we know who that person is. So they found him, and they gave the name over to UCSB and the police department, and they talked to him. So we don't really know anything beyond that because they're not releasing any details. This guy's not a suspect. They haven't identified him as a suspect. They're just somebody who they've spoken to. And they issued a statement and said, we talked to him, period. That's it. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. They were on Inside Edition. Liz Hamill's father, Alain Hamill, was on Inside Edition. They're getting national attention from a lot of these cable networks, and they've done all the work to bring this issue out. If you talk to the students, I've talked to them. They don't talk on the record. They're it's kind of a mystery as well. They just know she left with this guy, and then this happened, and they're not really saying too much more about what was happening at that restaurant at the time she left.
We may not know, but it does strike me as astonishing that you wouldn't have Henry Yang just say, what, we are in grief and we are mourning the loss of a student.
Anything,
Our
not a word.
And the family and friends, and clearly something's going on here. We need to pay attention. And one only thinks that they're worried about a possible lawsuit. Did she fall because the stairwell from which she fell was not safe enough? But I would say, Josh, to go to your point, is UCSB has taken a toss to the hands posture towards the media. And so, I mean, think of Munger Hall. Think of Munger Hall, the big 812, however many story column that they were going to build out there, that Charlie Munger was going to pay a big chunk of. Did Henry Yang ever once say to the public, I know this sounds kind of weird, it seems a little extreme, but here's why I'm doing it? Did Henry Yang ever say anything? Do you know how many times Henry Yang has had an interview with any media source? Like,
How about when he hit the guy when he's driving?
No, we don't talk to the police. He's had
allegedly
one interview with the Independent since he has been chancellor. One. And my takeaway from that interview was how Henry Yang would tap cantaloupes to see if they were ripe or not. Here's a guy who has really been a transformative chancellor, the longest serving chancellor in any UC history. And I mean, it's talk to the hand. And it has got worse.
I mean, we have legal liability. We got to be careful. I mean, where is the basic decency and compassion for this family? But they just lost their only daughter, a freshman, who they just sent off.
There are no cameras outside of the hall where she died, and that's what's complicating things. So I would imagine you don't have cameras, you're not watching who's coming in and out. That's probably a thing
Well,
that
and
might
there's
have.
another thing too. I,
Sure.
I I happen to be blessed with two interns at the moment, and they're both UCSB students. And it's like, first of all, everybody's gossiping about this. I mean, there's all kinds of stories about what did or didn't happen. Nobody knows for sure, but you know, it's all going around. And also some people are genuinely scared. It's like, wait a minute, is there some, crazy guy out there? Who knows what's going on? So it's just, in terms of the way they've treated the family and way they've treated the students and the way they've treated the community in the
You
last
know,
on the list, the media, it's
yeah, no,
just
it's
awful.
Henry Yang that has not been his forte, and it really, you have to be more part of the community. When things like that happen, you have to step up.
But I came here in 2002. It was right after the Adius thing.
Right.
He was out there with Adius, wasn't he? When the guy
I
mowed
did
down.
talk to him that night. He did go out in the crowd. I did interview him. Um, but that was, young in his career as chancellor. So, you
All
know,
right, there it is, the lesson, Callie. Don't ever get old. Um, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina, Callie
Well, it's too
Fausey.
late.
Thank you all so much for taking the time. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more updates on Nick's latest bicycle accident next week.
see ya.